right, bring in the next one.
Looked at him, he gave me his card. In that card, or on that card, was written, General Manager of Banff Springs Hotel.
Created a brand and an aura and a certain exclusivity. I think you started with a 14-seat restaurant, no reservations. How did you figure that out? That's like marketing genius.
I never thought about it marketing. I just wanted people to be respected and treated equally. Pierre Elliott Trudeau, a quintessential Canadian Prime Minister, had walked into the restaurant and wanted a table with Justin. I went up to Mr. Trudeau and I said, Mr. Trudeau, I thank you for coming to Vij's, but there's a 20-minute wait for a table right now. By giving them and providing them jobs and giving them equality of pay and respect so that they could send their children. I changed the life of a woman who probably would have never gotten the respect. I think I made a difference. It's not about the cuisine. I know people talk about, oh, you brought Indian food to the forefront.
Revolutionizing Indian cuisine in Canada. Everyone, please welcome chef, author, and entrepreneur all the way from Vancouver, BC, Chef Vikram Vij.
Welcome to ChallengerX. I'm your host, Jerome Dwight. On today's show, we have Vikram Vij, who is one of Canada's most celebrated chefs and one of the country's most respected entrepreneur operators. Born in India, trained in Austria, and rooted in Vancouver, Vikram transformed a small 14-seat restaurant into a Canadian hospitality empire built on culture, connection, and extraordinary service. Vij's became a cultural institution in Vancouver, famous for lineups around the block and an experience that made every guest feel genuinely welcome. Over the years, Vikram expanded his vision into acclaimed restaurants, best-selling books, television, packaged foods, and a role as a dragon on Dragon's Den. But what makes his story so powerful is not just the success, it's the servant leadership, humility, resilience, and a deep love for the people that built his business. This conversation goes far beyond food. It's about entrepreneurship, identity, leadership, and how to scale something meaningful without losing the soul of what made it special. So let's go. Let's get right into it. So Vikram Vij, it's an honor to have you. As I was saying before, we've had many notable executives, founders, entrepreneurs, but you are the first executive culinary chef expert who has reshaped the way Canadians eat. A lot of ethnic food and certainly the South Asian, Indian flavors. A lot of influence that you have had on the Canadian culture of eating, and so it's my honor to have you on the show. I'm dying to get into this. As you know, Canada is quite diverse, and Indian food and South Asian cuisine has now become sort of one of the most popular foods in our culture, right? But you had a big role to play in this, so I would love to start there. Learn a bit about your roots and how you came from India to Canada, and then we can pick it up from how you got into the food business.
Great. So first of all, namaste. Namaste means I honor you and you honor me. So I want to say namaste to you for having me on this podcast. The culinary journey started in India. Growing up with a family that loved food. But more than that, I loved being a Bollywood actor. And that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an actor. And at some point, my father decided that he was not going to allow me to become an actor. So the second thing I loved was food and stage. What more can you ask for? I go from India to Austria. You know, I didn't speak a word of German at the time because Salzburg was predominantly German. But I had the best time in my life because here was a 19-year-old Indian boy, you know, whose hormones are going nuts and goes to Europe, to Austria, and hangs out with all the European girls and boys. So in 6 months, my German was great and my sex life was even better. What more could I ask for?
You're living the dream.
I was living the dream. I was eating schnitzel. 19 years I had eaten Indian food. I was eating the schnitzel and the Karlsbraten and having all French food and drinking these delicious wines and getting into food and wine and culture. So if you actually look at it, I'm not an Indian chef. I'm a trained French chef. That is what I did. I happened to be working in Austria for a long time, and there was a gentleman from a very famous hotel in Canada who happens to be having dinner at this restaurant where I was working. And he wanted something spicy because he had gone skiing and he needed something spicy. So he asked for something spicy. The kitchen made fun of me because I was the only Indian in the kitchen. And they would say things like, "Oh, you're the best East Indian cook we have," because I was the only East Indian cook in the kitchen. And they said, "This guy wants something spicy." And I said, "Oh." So my mom had given me some garam masala. I took some goulash soup. I did sauteed some onions and ginger and garlic. And I made a little goulash soup spiced Indian way. A few minutes later, I get a call from the maitre d' saying, you are being called into the dining room. I thought I was going to get fired because maybe I spiced the shit out of that food. I thought I was going to get fired. So he comes and he says, "Guys like you should come to Canada because Canada is a country that allows immigrants to be successful, to follow their dreams, to be who they are." And I kind of looked at him. He gave me his card. In that card, or on that card, was written, "General Manager of Banff Springs Hotel, Canada." His name was Ivor Petrak. He was a Czechoslovakian immigrant who had gone to India. So he knew what Canada stood for, that immigration, that allowing people to be who they are. And I applied to him. I sent him my resume. And 6 weeks later, I got a little envelope. And in that envelope was a one-way ticket and a 6-month visa to work at the Banff Springs Hotel. The one-way ticket was, he knew fully well that once I came to Canada and I worked, I would never go back again. He knew that. The 6-month visa was, okay, his way out. If he doesn't like it, he can go back to where he came from. Right. And trust me, that was my journey of coming to Canada. That is when I landed in Calgary from Austria. And I have absolutely loved being a Canadian. I am the most unappointed ambassador of India and the biggest unappointed ambassador of Canada wherever I go, because I love the cuisine and the culture. Then I started working for some really good restaurants in Vancouver. But one day I was on the Punjabi market on 49th and Main. Not many people know it, but it's like being in Brampton or in Mississauga somewhere. And I had all these years kind of disassociated myself as being Indian. Because I'd always cooked French food, I'd always dated non-Indian girls, I'd always been that way. I never thought of myself as an Indian. But there was a time when I went to that Indian market and I had this revelation in my mind that now I understand why I'm so weird. Because I'm Indian. Why do I wobble my head like this? Why am I so dramatic? Why am I so differently? Because culturally, that is who I was for the 19 years, 20 years of my life. So, my root stock was Indian. Just because I was grafted from one root to the other, didn't take away my essence and my soul of being Indian. And that is where the journey of becoming an Indian chef started. That is where I said, whoa, hold on a second. I want the same respect as any French cuisine gets, any Italian cuisine gets. So I am going to serve my food with the same love and passion and not going to worry about anybody else, what they're going to do. That was the idea of opening Vij's, because Vikram is my first name and Vij is my last name. Vij was to honor the history and the heritage of my culture, where I came from, and my background. Obviously, my grandfather and my mothers and my aunts. I didn't call it Cuisine of India. I didn't call it Taj Mahal. I called it Vij's. So it's like, you come to my house, and that's what I'm going to do. Take care of you.
What was the moment where you said, you came to Canada, you looked around, and I think at that time, Indian food wasn't maybe as widespread and appreciated, and so for you to go from that genre into opening a restaurant, that must have taken a fair amount of courage and foresight into seeing, down the road one day Indian food is going to become more popular and accepted.
Not only was Indian food not considered important, it was considered ethnic and cheap. It was like, if one person was selling one samosa for $1, there was another person who was selling 2 samosas for $1. And I was like, no, stop. Why are we competing against each other when we should stand and say, you know what, my samosa is $1.50. Take it or leave it. Be honest and be straightforward and showcase the cuisine as it is supposed to be and be proud of the cuisine. But the biggest thing what I did was, I didn't buy ingredients cheap from India. I bought the ingredients from the local farmers in my backyard, in Vancouver, in Langley, in Abbotsford, in those places, because I wanted it to be like an Indian village, which was the spices were coming from India, but the produce was produced in my backyard. So I was able to support the farmers, the purveyors, and the people who were doing mushrooms and things like this, and combining it together and showcasing it and making it a story and telling people that, yes, my food is not cheap. Because good food, whether it's Italian or French or Indian or Mexican, should not be cheap.
I want to land on the storytelling aspect, because you created almost an aura around your restaurant. Like when my first visit to Vancouver 20 years ago, I had heard of Vij's restaurant even before I got there, right? And so you had created a brand and an aura and a certain exclusivity. I think you started with a 14-seat restaurant, no reservations. How did you figure that out? That's like marketing genius, right?
But it wasn't marketing. I never thought about it marketing. I just wanted people to be respected and treated equally. So it didn't matter where you came from, what you did in your life, and how much money you have. I wanted to break down all the things that used to happen in our restaurant industry. So if somebody was famous, somebody had money, they always got a reservation ahead of everybody else. I wanted to show respect to each and every individual, whether you're a nurse or a teacher or a janitor or a famous actor or a millionaire or a billionaire, you would be treated with the same respect and love. For me, Gandhi had said that we are all equal. Those words rung in my head and said we are all equal. And one day, I just opened this up and I was just contemplating this thing that, because I was getting a lot of negative feedback from people saying, what does he think? There's an hour wait for his tables and stuff like that. One day, an older gentleman walks in with a young boy in his arm with a little stick, and he walks into the restaurant, and then the whole restaurant goes pin drop silence. Everyone looks to see if I would change my principles of no reservations and whether I would give that older gentleman a reservation ahead of everybody else or give him a table ahead of everybody else. Pierre Elliott Trudeau, a quintessential Canadian Prime Minister, had walked into the restaurant and wanted a table with Justin at the time. Justin was a young kid. I went up to Mr. Trudeau and I said, Mr. Trudeau, I thank you for coming to Vij's, but there's a 20-minute wait for a table right now. And guess what? He walked to the back, sat at the back, in that back area, had a small beer. His table came up in 20 minutes, had the beer for 20 minutes. His table came up, he went and sat down. He had a delicious food. As he was leaving the dining room, I went up to him and I touched his feet. And you know, in India, you don't touch many people's feet. You only do it when you respect someone. I touched his feet and I said, Mr. Trudeau, thank you for your policies in 1960s that allowed immigrants like us to come and fulfill our dreams and be who we are. Because that was such an important moment for me. I'm not saying it was only him. I mean, I'm not saying, but there was a moment of a quintessential prime minister that had come. And he, picked me up and he gave me a hug. He said, I've had Indian food lots of times, but this was one of the finest I've ever had. To me, that moment when a quintessential Canadian prime minister can wait for a table for 20 minutes, I felt that so can everybody else. So all those doubts of no reservations and everything else went down with a large glass of scotch at the end of the night. And I said, I'm not going to change my policies of no reservations. I'm going to stick to this. And people say now it is marketing genius. It wasn't. It was purely to showcase and bring people equality. And I'm sure when you were waiting, I brought you a cup of chai or something to munch on. That is Indian hospitality. That's what I wanted to showcase. The hospitality of welcoming someone to somebody's house. It was not a marketing. I never went to a bloody school for marketing. I've never needed to. I've always been who I am. I've never needed to. So when that time came, I felt confident of what I was doing. So when now people say, oh, you created a brand, I look at them and say, no, I just stayed true to myself and what my beliefs were. And I didn't kowtow to some venture capitalist or somebody else. I built my own empire.
That's so inspiring. And I could sense your emotion when, going back to, Pierre Trudeau's interaction with you and the time you came to Canada. Many immigrants came because of Pierre Trudeau and looking for that first start, as did my parents. And I think, Canada, maybe not perfect, but has so many proud achievements like yourself who, with, countless other recipients of hospitality of the Canadian policies at the time, and so Canada is better off for someone like you who brought Indian food to the nation. How important is it for business leaders to be led by their principles? Because as you said, you had this firm belief that equality was not something that could be, purchased or compromised, right? And it really resonated with the audience back then when, people realized that there wasn't a reservation or a special VIP line anymore, right? How important was that? I'm sure you got a lot of pressure to not to hold on to that, especially when VIPs walked in the door like Pierre Trudeau.
It was important to recognize and to respect that teacher or that person who had just come to have dinner at Vij's, to show them the same respect, because you never know when and who goes through what times of their lives.
Mm.
And today you may be a teacher, but tomorrow you could be somebody different. And to me, the color of our blood is equal. It is the same. Where it doesn't matter whether you come from Ghana or Ethiopia or Sri Lanka or Punjab, we are all the same. And to me, that is why I have believed that I, Vikram Vij, may come from the largest democracy in the world called India, but I live in the best democracy in the world called Canada. And to me, those democratic values are the fundamentals of who Vikram Vij is. That is far more important to me. Treating women with respect in the kitchen, giving them their fair wages, making sure that they are well loved and respected in the kitchen. Because I have all ladies in the kitchen, they've been with me for 32 years, was and purely to pay them well and enough so that they could send their kids to proper schools and buy proper clothes like everybody else's. That was where I think I made a difference. It's not about the cuisine. I know people talk about, you brought Indian food to the forefront and stuff. No. I changed the lives of those 10 Indian women that worked for me in the kitchen by giving them and providing them jobs and giving them equality of pay and respect so that they could send their children. I changed the life of a woman who probably would have never gotten the respect. That is Vikram's moment. Indian food, whether it's Vikram, whether it's James, whether it's John, somebody else will change the way Indian food will be perceived. When people say to me, you were the first Indo-Canadian dragon, I don't see it as the first Indo-Canadian dragon. I see it as my being an Indo-Canadian dragon gave hope to that line cook who's Indian, to that Filipino, to that Sri Lankan, to that boy who came as an immigrant, to say, if a Vikram Vij as a line cook can become a dragon, so can I. That pursuit of desire to get to that next level is where I feel I created that love for the people. Not just Indian food. I don't want to say this. Indian food, yes, that was my medium to become something. That was my business that generated me enough revenue to pay everybody else. But fundamentally, how I believe is I changed people's lives. I changed that farmer's life. I changed by buying that person's produce, I allowed that German farmer to go out and be successful and continue growing those tomatoes and those eggplants and those potatoes, or the meat people. You know, that inspiration of inspiring the people, because somebody else did that to me once. I held that Ivor Petrak held my hand and brought me to this place. Now it was my turn to be that legacy of a human being, to say, you know, he changed the way I, you know, my kids could go to school properly, or my kids could buy those shoes that they really wanted, because I was paid well and not under the table and cheap.
So impressive that you have lived your whole span of your career driven by principles and values of helping others around you, and undoubtedly has also resulted as a byproduct in enormous success. You've gone from starting the restaurant to, you know, a hospitality brand, Dragon's Den, cookbooks, endless series of ventures. How did you, you know, were you fueled by this purpose to continue to grow and expand? How did those sort of ventures outside of the restaurant start to take shape?
I've always believed that people should eat food from different cultures every day of the week. So one day they should eat Italian, the other day they should eat French, the other day they should eat Indian, Vietnamese, Cambodian. Because I believe that food or cuisines and music bring people together. When you eat food from a different part of the world, when you listen to music that's not your normal genre, it builds tolerances. And I've always been a person who's wanting to build tolerances towards each other, to respect each other's cultures, whether you're Ethiopian or Ghanaian or wherever it is very important. So everything that we have done in the outside of the restaurant is an arm for that person to buy that samosa at home and feel comfortable, or buy that cauliflower bite, or buy that chicken curry at home. The idea was never a business. Of course, at the end of the day, the business has to make sense. Right? You have to have that. I mean, otherwise you can't survive. But the goal was always bringing awareness to the cuisine, bringing awareness to the different parts of India, bringing awareness to everything else. The core stayed the same, but the offshoots of it, whether it was doing Dragon's Den, whether it was doing Chopped Canada or any other TV shows, was always to bring awareness, so that I wanted people to eat food from different parts of the world.
Fabulous. It strikes me as all of these ventures, from food to commercial success, has really not as much about the food as it is about people and bringing dignity to people, which is so admirable. In the last few minutes we have, what advice would you give budding entrepreneurs? Let's say the young person who's just come to Canada, right? We've got a wave of immigration. There's a lot of challenges that they're facing right now in terms of headwinds and obstacles. Maybe not the same ones you faced, but they're facing their own. Looking back on the span of your life lessons, what are some things you can share with them to find some purpose as they kind of push forward?
I think the biggest thing for me is find a passion that you really love. Find a passion that you really believe in and love. Then spend at least 10,000 hours in knowing that passion whether you really love. So spend 10 years studying that passion, working in that passion, figuring out that passion. Is this something that you want? And then have the balls and the courage to invest that money. And if it fails, so be it.
Mm-hmm.
So find the passion. My passion was food. My passion was people. My passion was stage. You know, the funniest thing is I just told my dad the other day, I said, for all your talk about that my son should not become an actor, my son should not be acting, I said, Papa, you have no idea. Every day at 5:30, when that door opens of the restaurant called Vij's, I am performing.
That's right. You've got a stage.
I got my stage. My stage is my restaurant. I said, it's just a different stage. So one underlying point is, don't hold anyone back. Don't tell anyone they can't do this. Let them follow their own passion. But be passionate. Work behind that passion for 10 years. You cannot be passionate and not know what's happening at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And third of all, take the risk. You came empty-handed into this country anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So what if you lose it?
Go for it.
And I did lose it. There was a time when the production factory didn't do well. It didn't do well. For all my name and my fame, it didn't do well. And I rebuilt it with creating something new and different.
Mm-hmm.
So have the courage to lose it all. And then figure it out. And if it didn't work, that's life.
Mm-hmm.
If it did work, you might be on a podcast one day.
In the last few minutes I have, I'm going to ask you a very sensitive question. I come from I'm married to an Indian lady and a family of Indian chefs. What is your favorite dish? And what is the secret to great Indian cooking?
I think my favorite dish, and I told this to somebody else the other day. I said, if I'm on my deathbed and my last dish, all I want is a bowl of dal, lentil curry, 2 chapatis, and a nice bottle of red wine. That's it.
Wow.
It has to be local. I don't care where it came from. A bowl of lentils, lentil curry, 2 chapatis, 2 breads. Because at the end of the day, if I'm going up, it's the most down-to-earth peasant food that you can eat.
Mm.
And a bottle of wine, I'm a sommelier, so I love my bottle of wine.
Right.
That's how I want to go. But for me, that is the most fundamentally, most beautiful dish. Indian food, what makes it so special is not just the ingredients, but it's the timing of when the spices go in. So how much onions have you put in? Ginger and garlic. When did you put it in? Roasting it. And I'm sure you can see this being married to an Indian. She makes chai and you make chai. Same water, same milk, same tea, same sugar. Her chai would be different than your chai. Why? Because the love is in the hands. Indian food is not a formula. It is an open canvas. Enjoy however you want and dance however the fuck you want in life and have fun at it. That's how I see cooking. That's how I see life.
It's a perfect way to end this amazing podcast. It's been my honor to have you, Vikram. This is a masterclass in entrepreneurship, but living with purpose. One of the most impactful Canadians to be on this podcast. It's our honor to have you, and we look forward to having you again. Thank you.
My pleasure. Namaste. And it was great sharing the journey, but also being vulnerable and accepting that vulnerability at times.
We appreciate that. And please, our global headquarters is here in Toronto. Whenever you're in town, we have had other dragons speak to our town, our team in a town hall. We do social media around that. Would love to, anytime you're in Toronto, please do come and visit us.
Okay.
I will.
Okay. Have a great one. Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.